The Winnipeg Jets won game one of their playoff series, but it's been downhill since then. Harrison Lee of Locked On Winnipeg Jets joins us to discuss what's been going wrong and can the Jets fix it. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, Harrison Lee. And Harrison, I wish it was under better circumstances. Game one, the Jets surprised some people, winning a high-scoring affair, and it's been difficult since then, dropping 3 straight. Why haven't we seen the Jets playing their style of hockey for most of this series?
Unfortunately, I think it's 2 things, right? I think the first is that the coaching staff really overthought this series rather than kind of follow the blueprint and template that they set up in their previous games against whether it was Colorado or Dallas. These are all really good teams in transition, and Winnipeg did a good job of denying a lot of those zone entries, disrupting their speed, slowing them down, and then Winnipeg was able to sort of keep it instead of like a full court, kind of keep it like a half-court press, which worked a lot better. But now Colorado has been able to just basically skate by us. I think their speed, their skill, and the coaching staff for the Jets, unfortunately, kind of getting lapped by Colorado. I think the Avs have just been able to really overmatch us to the point where, the Jets were supposed to have a depth advantage, and instead, pretty much every Colorado Avs line has schooled the Jets. So it's a tough one, but technically fixable. But I'm having a hard time seeing it after these first 4 games.
You mentioned that the coaching staff is being out coached or maybe overthinking things. Are we, if this series ends quickly, are we looking at a possible coaching change? Or do you think they're just going to say, stuff happens, we had a great season, and the staff will come back?
Given how last season ended and how some of the players were calling out the coaching staff in tonight's press conference, I would say there's definitely going to be a change. I think there was probably going to be a change anyways. I think Bones was always supposed to be sort of a temporary measure, maybe 1 or 2 years, and then you hand over the reins to what looks to be Scott Arniel. I don't know how I feel about that 100%. We've seen some glimpses with Arniel, and I feel like he's a little bit more progressive. I think he's got some decent ideas, but it's hard to really get a read on his full sample size. So either way, regardless of how deep the Jets go, I think because of all the stuff that's happened for Bones personally, whether it's his wife or his own health, and the fact that he's been around for a very long time, he's had an amazing career. I don't think that there's any shame if he was to consider maybe hanging it up and retiring after this year.
Talk to me about Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, one of the best goalies in the league, but hasn't had a great series. How much of the last 3 games, or even game 1, which was high scoring, how much of it is on Hellebuyck and how much of it is on the team in front of him?
I would say most of it's probably on the team in front of him. I mean, there's a couple of goals that he won't love, but generally speaking, the Jets' PK was just atrocious. They basically screened him, and, you'd have Nichushkin or any other manner of players literally just free in front of Hellebuyck for a tip. And Makar's the kind of guy who will see those shooting lanes, and he basically has a free pass to the net. So for the PK, definitely on the Jets. At even strength, I think you'd like maybe 1 or 2 extra saves, but the Jets have just been so bad. I mean, they've spent so much time in their own end, and honestly, given how much the Jets are conceding in high danger chances and stuff, I think Hellebuyck has probably saved maybe 1 or 2 more than you might think. But I mean, his numbers aren't really that much worse than what an average goalie would be expected to give up. It's just been a horrendous series from the Jets, and I think a lot of us are probably hoping that it ends a little bit sooner.
As far as players, I mean, the old cliche in the playoffs, your best players have to be your best players. We've mentioned Connor Hellebuyck. Anyone else that you feel has just really struggled for the Jets in this series?
I think it'd actually be easier for me to say who hasn't struggled. I think everyone has just been pretty much bottom of the barrel. Morrissey, I would say, is one of the few exceptions. He's been great. Appleton had a solid game today. I mean, he wasn't able to really impact the scoreline, but I thought he had a fine enough game. Nemesnikov was doing okay before he got injured. Really, though, I mean, you're starting to really grasp for straws. I mean, Connor has probably been the most engaged that he's ever been on the top line, and, Scheifele and Velarde are doing some stuff out there, but, not much of it has really paid off, and I think that's kind of been one of the toughest things. The depth scoring is not really there either, so, the top six, it's kind of been coming upon them to be the standard bearers, and they really haven't looked anything the part at all this series.
What does this performance say about the leadership inside the locker room, the captain and sort of the players who are supposed to be leading the way?
So I think there's a couple of things there. I think, for one, I think players bought into this, to the way that Bones wanted the team to play, and it's clearly not working. So now they're like, oh, well, we need to make adjustments. The Avs made their adjustments. We haven't done anything, and it's, on the staff. But, effort-wise, I think they're trying as hard as they can. But, I mean, if this is the system that they wanted, it's hard to say that they really can complain about it. I mean, you're looking at a team that was built to be heavy and slower against a team that's lightning fast and has rapid passing. Unfortunately, you kind of get what you ask for. And I think that's the Jets in a nutshell, is that they've put themselves in a tough spot. And I think that there's definitely ways out of it, but I just don't know that it's going to happen this year.
You mentioned ways out of it. What do the Jets have to do to try to get back into this series?
I think the biggest thing is just pressuring Colorado. They've given them so much time and respect, and I think that's a mistake. Colorado's getting away with tons of little picks and stuff, and if they're not going to call that, do the same thing. If you're gonna let your opponents cheat, you might as well take advantage of the same loopholes and try and slow them, because that's the biggest problem they're facing right now. And also, play Cole Perfetti. I mean, it really shouldn't be rocket science. You have a 40-point player sitting in the press box. No other team in the playoffs is doing this. I mean, that's just like very common sense. And then I think the other thing that they need to do is put Colin Miller in on the back end. I appreciate the effort that Stanley goes through, but this series is absolutely not one that he was designed for. He cannot skate out of a corner, and the agility and stuff that he struggles with is exactly what the Avs feast upon.
Talk to me a little about special teams in this series.
Oh, so
sorry.
Yeah, I know. The power play looked okay in game one and didn't score, and ever since then it's just been pretty mediocre. A lot of the stuff that they've had trouble with whether it's setting up zone possession, making zone entries, I mean, just the basic stuff, it's looked bad, and it's been that way the whole year. So is it new? No. Is it frustrating? Yes. Unfortunately, every time Velarde goes off the ice, the power play suddenly dies with it. So when he was out from injury, power play was pretty awful. And you look at the talent on this team, and it should not be that bad. But, it is what it is. The PK, the less said about it, the better. I've probably spent a couple of years now talking about how bad it is. This year, though, like compared to last year, it was like average. This year, they've just completely nosedived. No pressure. There's just way too much time and space, and it's frustrating. I mean, you watch the same thing over and over again, and I don't understand how Arniel, who was handling this side of things, went from like a league average PK that looked halfway decent to one of the worst 5 units in the whole league. Wow,
that's a big drop off, and yet such a successful season point wise for the team. Looks like they're in big trouble right now in this series with Colorado. Harrison, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
They can find me at HL Living Loco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. We're, of course, available under Locked On Winnipeg Jets on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, same as Locked On Today. So be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And as always, we really appreciate your support.
All right, Harrison, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks. Have a great one.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee. So Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature on Gametime, you go on the app and you could see the view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.